Hello there, I'm that Metroid guy. This is going to be more of a discussion rather than talking about any potential leaks or rumours. And this is going to be a little more casual. I don't have much of a script, so we'll go with that as we will. Before we get into the main part of the discussion, be sure to like and subscribe for more Metroid videos. My goal this year is to get to 10,000 subscribers, and with your help we can get there in no time. So, as we know, Metroid Prime 4 was announced ages ago. We haven't had anything concrete since then, but I would like to talk about whether Metroid Prime 4 should even release on the Switch itself. As we know, the Switch is getting a bit old now. It just passed its 6th anniversary. We're going into its 7th year, and it's really starting to show its age. I say this as if Metroid Prime Remastered didn't just release for the system, and that is probably one of the best looking games on the entire console, and runs at a stable 60 FPS. But I don't think that really counts because Retro are technical wizards. We'll go more into that, but for the most part, even on release, there have been some hitches, such as Breath of the Wild being quite inconsistent while being 30 FPS. And we don't need to talk about Pokemon, and I feel like that's kind of unfair for a comparison. So let's just go to Metroid Dread. That game performed at 60 FPS and has a relatively simple art style, but the 60 FPS wasn't consistent, at least for me. There were several times where the game would hitch and chug and stuff like that. It felt awful when it did happen, and it would always happen at quite pivotal moments. For example, the Red Emmy boss fight. Even in Metroid Prime Remastered, there would be sections of the game where it does chug a little bit, but that is mostly from when terrain is being destroyed or the loading screens in the elevators. I will get to the Metroid Prime Remastered review, don't worry. So taking that into account, would it be best for Metroid Prime 4 to release on the next Nintendo console? There's the other option of pulling a Breath of the Wild and releasing on the Switch and the next generation of Nintendo consoles. All of them have pros and cons, and I want to go into them now. So let me know what you guys think. So why should Metroid Prime 4 release on the Nintendo Switch? Well, the Switch was originally what the game was announced for, so there is that. The Switch has a lot of people playing on it. As far as I remember, it sold about 100 million units. That's a lot. And there's also the case of familiarity. People are quite familiar with the Switch controls at this point, and Metroid Prime Remastered, I'll constantly bring it up because it is a good taster for what's to come. People are familiar with that game and how it controls, how you can optimize controls and how it performs. So there is familiarity there. There's also the handheld aspect. With the next gen console, I would like for it to be docked only, but that's my preference. Handheld is a big reason why the Switch was so successful, so there is that aspect. It would be good if the next gen console was hybrid as well, but performed better if it was docked. Obviously there's pure bias here, but that should be a given because it's my video. So what about the cons for the Switch? Well, handheld again. It limits the performance of the Switch quite considerably, both for battery life as well as performance. You need to take all of that into account without being too demanding, because the Switch, when in handheld mode, already reduces resolution. The Switch is also, as I mentioned earlier, old hardware by now, and even on release, it wasn't up to snuff compared to the competition. It was fine, sure, but it never really reached maximum potential, if you know what I mean. And I feel like that would be the case with Metroid Prime 4. I feel like for Metroid Prime 4 to be at its best and do what it needs to do to be as amazing as it can be, it needs to be on next gen. Metroid Prime Remastered is definitely a great taster, but I want the main course. I want to be completely blown away with Metroid Prime 4. So what about next gen? Well, as I implied, there are more possibilities with little to no impact to performance. I feel like Metroid Prime 4 would be able to do what it wants to do with no hitches to performance, like beyond what the Switch could even dream of, while running at a stable 60 FPS. That is paramount. Because even Metroid Prime Remastered, there are technical things you can spot with like the visuals and stuff. You could see the models being replaced from the low resolution to the medium resolution and then the higher quality models. It's very obvious to see, and that was obviously purely done to retain the 60 FPS aspect, which, thank you Retro, that is exactly what should be done. But I feel like the Switch, it would be that non-stop. with a next-gen console, that would either be far less noticeable as well as far less necessary. Like I said earlier, I truly want to be blown away by the visuals of Metroid Prime 4 while having it be 60 FPS. And that would make for a great first impression for the new console. Having a truly next-generation experience on a Nintendo console that can rival the PS5 and Xbox Series X, and it being Metroid Prime to do that, that is the perfect first taste of the console. And it would also be quite good if it was a launch title for the console, so it'd kind of go hand in hand to give a great first impression of the console, but also to show the jump between the Switch and this new console. I will say that this is probably the most risky option of the three due to Metroid's historic lack of success, but I feel like it could have the greatest reward, both for Metroid and for Nintendo, because it shows that Nintendo are taking a risk and are putting their best technical foot forward, and with good performance to go on top. And a big criticism of Metroid Dread, for example, was that it didn't look like a next-gen experience, which is quite a dumb comment, but I could sort of see where they're coming from in the sense it is a simplistic art style, it is 2D. It doesn't compare to the grandiose and immersive worlds of the Prime games. The 2D games are more of a mechanics first, visuals later, but with Prime, it's an investment. You have to be a part of the world, and that both involves visuals but also performance more than anything. But I also feel like this could be exactly what the franchise needs to have the best foot in the door, and to make it so Metroid is the first thing you see. It would put Metroid in the forefront for a lot of Nintendo projects as well as the public in general. There's a new Nintendo console and the first thing you see is this incredible, beautiful scenery, and it's from Metroid. You see Samus in the background going through all these places with so many different types of animals and environments that weave perfectly into each other. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But there is also the caveat that some people bought the Switch specifically for Metroid Prime 4. I am one of those people. So I can imagine that people would feel a bit hard done by if Metroid Prime 4 was originally announced for the Switch, only to never release for it, which is a nice segue into the next section where Metroid Prime 4 could release on both. Both the Switch and the next generation console. And again, this has pros and cons just like all the others. The biggest benefit, I think, is that it gives options to the players. If you have a Switch, you don't need to upgrade, but if the visual differences and performance differences are justifiably different, as in the next generation console is much better visually and more consistently at 60 FPS, then you might have reason to get the next console. It's the exact same situation as Breath of the Wild. Ideally, of course, I would like them to perform around the same, but if the next gen console was more stable and didn't need to swap out low quality for higher quality models, then I would go for that personally. Breath of the Wild succeeded this way, so it's a tried and successful formula already. And like I said, it's a good way to compare the systems, because if you would play footage side by side, you'd be able to see the performance hitches. For example, on the Switch, you'd see the model swap out, but on the newer console, it's always 60 FPS, whereas on the Switch, it would probably chug a little bit here and there. I feel like this would also be likely guaranteed success, but maybe not reaching the highest of highs as if Metroid Prime released on the next gen only. And I also feel like this would be the more costly route, especially in terms of development, and so Nintendo would have a lot less profits basically. And we need to remember that Metroid Prime 4 is already quite a costly game. It had to go through a complete restart. That is millions down the drain. But like I said, I feel like it would be guaranteed success and would be a good way to give players options, as well as a neat way to compare the systems of the Switch and the next generation console. Personally, I would like a wholly next gen experience. Mostly so Metroid Prime 4 is not hampered in any way. I wouldn't like it if the devs had a certain image or a certain idea and they weren't able to achieve it purely because the Switch is just not capable of doing it. And that's not to say that the next generation console wouldn't have some of that, but I feel like with the Switch you would hit roadblock after roadblock and do so many shortcuts to not make those problems as noticeable. Like I said, retro technical wizards, they could do incredible stuff, so imagine what they could do on next gen. But what do you guys think about all this? Let me know in the comments down below. I still strongly feel that next gen would be the way to go, but I do see all the arguments for and against the points that I've brought up here. So that'll be that. I'm that Metroid guy, and I will see you on the next mission. Bye bye.